Alrighty, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this next session in the volunteer engagement webinar series. We're super excited today to have Kristin Dillard with us from Interfaith Dental, who's the volunteer engagement specialist. Before we get started and I hand it over to Kristin, I just wanted to remind everyone that the webinar is being recorded. So feel free to type your questions into the chat box. Everyone's going to be muted, so that way we reduce any kind of background noise for our speaker. And then if you have any questions or any stories that you'd like to share, since we are being recorded, just make sure that we kind of have that de-identified and, we're not calling anybody out. So without further ado, Kristin, we appreciate you so much for being with us today. Happy National Volunteer Week, and we're really excited to hear your presentation today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sydney. Thank you so much for having me today, and really for this important webinar series. I've really enjoyed them, and I just think it's so important. So I appreciate all the work that you do with this as well. So yeah, my name's Kristin Dillard. I have supported the volunteers at Interfaith Dental for 10 years now. That's me on the left. On the right's one of our volunteers. She's an extern and a future dental hygienist. So Interfaith Dental gives transformational and income appropriate oral health care for Middle Tennesseans who are underinsured and are experiencing poverty. So definitely I would encourage you to check us out, interfaithdental.com. We are, we're kind of a big deal. We're pretty awesome. I was drawn to volunteer administration as a career when, as a volunteer, I would have experiences that ranged from very fulfilling to very frustrating. And I became a passionate advocate for giving volunteers the best experience possible. So I started my career supporting volunteer Girl Scout leaders. Now my volunteers are mostly dental clinicians and future dentists, as well as sort of corporate groups and all those kind of folks. And as a volunteer, I have served at the Humane Association, with a county political party, as an adult literacy tutor. I've done community cleanups, room at the inn, meal delivery, lots more, probably just like all of you lovely people. So what I know is this: understanding why our volunteers give their time is essential to knowing how to recruit them, how to utilize them successfully, and how to keep them coming back. Which brings us to today's topic. So the motivations to volunteer is a study that one of many studies done by E. Gil Clary. He collaborated with lots of folks, including lots of collaborations with Mark Snyder over many years. This was kind of the pivoting work of his about really identifying and putting all of the volunteer reasons to serve kind of in 6 buckets so that we can better understand how to utilize and meet those needs of those volunteers. So, and again, Sydney said, as we go along, please feel free to pop any questions at all in the chat. I can't see the chat, so Sydney's definitely going to just hop up and interrupt me if I need to clarify or anything, or any questions about anything confusing that I said. And then definitely I'm going to remember to do lots of times. Would love yeah, definitely know if I can clarify anything during the presentation. And yeah, so here we go. We all know, it's a very unicorn volunteer who serves just solely out of the goodness of their heart, isn't looking for any benefit or reward for their service. We know people give their time for a number of different reasons, and they hope for another number of different rewards. So knowing a volunteer's motivations can help in recruiting that volunteer, in making their service meaningful and enjoyable, which makes them then an advocate for our mission, making this service beneficial to the agency, keeping them coming back, and maybe even converting them to a donor. So in the beginning, let me state right away that there is absolutely no judgment anywhere in this presentation, only seeking to understand so we can better support our missions and our volunteers. There are no wrong or right motivations for volunteering, only different ones. So for the benefit of the clients or issues that are served by our agencies, as well as the benefit of our personal client, the volunteer, it's crucial to understand the volunteer's motivations. And as a background, we're probably familiar with these two categories of egoistic and altruistic, sometimes called extrinsic and intrinsic. Those mark the difference kind of between whether one wants to benefit oneself or they want to benefit others. No judgment, again. So the 6 main motivations that we'll get into will all fit pretty neatly into one of these two categories, but Clary and Snyder just goes deeper into motivations. So I just wanted to ensure that I wasn't using lingo later on that was unfamiliar. So let us know in the chat, is this a familiar set of terms? Any sort of question or clarification on that before we go? I'm going to assume Sydney's going to stop me if needed. Awesome.
Yep, nothing through the chat yet.
Love it. Hey, everybody hop up and say, hi, Sydney, hi, Kristin in the chat. Did we see it, Sydney? Are people saying hi?
Yep, we have some people who are typing, and yep, we're getting them all coming in.
Yay! For the interaction, y'all. So to link the upcoming 6 motivations with performance and retention, I'm going to reference their commitment styles. This isn't the study or the terms that we're really getting into today, but this is another study from Preston and Brown that identified 3 main styles here of commitment, which may be why people continue to serve. This study actually talked about the commitment styles and their relation to volunteer retention and people's success in their volunteer role, their engagement with what they're doing. So I'll reference that a little bit, but these are just as a background. This is another study that I'm referencing that we won't go deep into, but it's an interesting study, and definitely suggest folks check it out if you're interested in the future. So using that just as a reference, then let's get into Clary and Snyder's 6 main motivations to volunteer. So these are the 6 main categories that were identified by Clary and Snyder. There are, of course, a multitude of individual reasons that people volunteer, but these researchers contend that all of those varying reasons can be placed in one of these 6 buckets. So let us talk about them. This values motivation is where we can tend to feel like all volunteers should land if we're being judgy. Clary and Snyder describe this motivation as, I feel it's important to help others. So this is actually the only motivator of the 6 that is truly altruistic or extrinsic, with the volunteer really feeling no need to gain from their service emotionally or otherwise. So obviously, this is the unicorn, right? And by far not the most primary motivation we see in our volunteers, but we can tend to assume that volunteers either will have or should have this motivation. But again, we got to get out of the judgment zone. It is very common, though, for values to kind of be a secondary motivation or a side benefit of giving time. So it's a good thing to understand and realize. It's one of the motivation that fall under Preston and Brown's 3 commitment styles of effective, and that just means that it correlates with better retention and higher engagement in the volunteer role. So folks really want to do a good job if this is their motivation. So for that very important reason, I'd suggest that even those who come to us with other motivations besides this one can be moved to some of this value connection to our missions with the right cultivation in our part. So with that in mind, let's talk about how we can support volunteers who are motivated by use and maybe cultivate this motivation in all of our volunteers. So many things, of course, this probably looks like stuff that we are all doing, but especially for administrative service, connecting the task to the mission and letting folks know how their past service kind of benefited the agency, that can help volunteers to really get how things like their envelope stuffing or their landscaping or data entry or whatever is helping with things like raising money to do more good, or boosting clients' pride in the agency, or alleviating some workload from the staffers who can then give more time to the program. So really important that no matter what people are doing, we really explain and provide info to them on how their task is supporting the mission of the agency. Also, it's important, if we can, to offer tasks with direct contact with the client or issue, if possible. At our agency, people who are not registered clinicians typically only are doing administrative tasks, but we sometimes have them come in and take patient photos on new patient day as a way to kind of have them in face-to-face with our client and really feeling connected with the mission that they're helping us to serve. So that's certainly not something we needed to have a volunteer do, but something that kind of has connected them with the important reason that we are all volunteering or working at Interfaith Dental. So I'd love to know in the chat if any of your agencies kind of have issues finding tasks that can be done by volunteers that are client facing, like we do. Is anybody that, you know, your staff is so technical that it's hard to have volunteers do really program-based stuff?
I don't see anyone typing into the chat, but I know a lot of our programs, our volunteers work directly with the clients. So for example, we have Medicare counseling, so they counsel those individuals on the phone or in person, and meal delivery, giving rides. Please, anyone feel free to type in the chat, or you can unmute yourself as well if you have definitely a different perspective.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm thinking of things like, you know, sort of women's shelters who are protecting clients whose identities shouldn't be shared. Those might be agencies as well that would have a hard time with remembering to be intentional about connecting the volunteer service with the mission, while still being very reverent of the clients that you serve and not making them kind of, you know, what do they call that, poverty porn, where you're like, this is a poor person you're helping or whatever. So
we do have one program where it's a kind of one of our better kept secrets. That's called the CREVA program. It's the Collaborative Response for Elder and Vulnerable Adult Abuse. I think I got that right. I think I got all the letters. But it's really working with victims of abuse or violence, or, you know, anything like that. So we really aren't as forward facing with that program, and we're helping more behind the scenes, and aren't like, hey, we helped this person who was financially exploited, yay us. You know, we don't want to, you know, shout that out to the masses, but we also want to promote the program so people know that it's a resource.
Exactly. Perfect example. Yeah. Awesome. Values motivation. Again, we sort of think it's huge, and it's not always the reason why people come to us and serve. So the next one, enhancement. This one is kind of the flip side of values. Clary and Snyder described this one as volunteering makes me feel better about myself. So not a drive to just extrinsically do something wonderful. So it is technically egoistic or extrinsic, that they are sort of looking for something from their service, but it is a very wonderful thing that they're looking for. They're kind of looking for, you know, feelings of doing good. So closely connected with values, but definitely this is a volunteer who kind of is easier to give valuable recognition to, and more often than not, who we assume is the values volunteer is really the enhancement volunteer. And it may seem selfish, but I believe it's an excellent motivator. And folks in this category typically really want to do a good job in their role. They also have a tendency to stick around for as long as we can make their service feel meaningful. So with that in mind, just talk about how we can support these volunteers who are motivated by enhancement. I imagine this looks like lots of things that we as volunteer administrators are already doing. So consistent gratitude in a variety of ways. That's pretty standard volunteer recognition. So, and the more you get to know your volunteers, the more you'll learn their particular love language, to know whether they prefer private or public recognition, whether they prefer little small gifts or tokens, that kind of thing. And thank you notes, of course, can be written by you as the volunteer administrator. They can be written by your executive director, the program staff you work alongside, the clients that your agency serves. A good variety of who those thank you notes come from is always very nice as well. It also might look like inclusion in events. So staff meetings, professional conferences, networking events, anything that you as a staff tend to attend, including our volunteers in that is a great way of making folks feel important to the agency, accepted in the organization family, and the opportunity to give feedback. That definitely lets folks know that they're important to us. We could ask how they do similar things in their own jobs, how they would prefer to do an administrative project. We can give surveys on the volunteer experience, that sort of thing, in order to allow them to really give feedback and let them know that we're not just presenting them with, you know, you are a worker and here's the things you do, but you are a valued partner with this agency and we want to hear your voice. So I'd love to know in the chat in this kind of bucket, because this is a very, you know, widely discussed volunteer recognition bucket. Is there anything really awesomely creative that folks are doing in this space with thanks and recognition?
Go ahead and type in the chat box, or if you want to unmute yourself, please feel free to do that and share your story. I mean, I got plenty of stories, but I want other people to talk to.
I know, you know, I'm looking for ideas. I got a pen.
One thing, and I apologize, I'm speaking for the nutrition program, so I know our nutrition director, Kita, is on, so if she wants to tell me to shut up, she can. So we've been kind of flirting around with the idea. It hasn't been implemented yet, but flirting with the idea to provide clients. Oh, we had a comment come in, volunteers giving their testimonials. That's always extremely beneficial for sure. We're talking about maybe printing up some thank you cards for the meal delivery drivers to give to clients and asking the clients to write a thank you note to the volunteer. So not only is it coming from us as staff, but it's also coming from the people that we serve. So the volunteers know that not only we appreciate them, but the people that they're directly serving and helping appreciate what they're doing.
I love it. I love the testimonials too. So when you're asking for volunteer testimonials, are you where are you sharing that? Like, are they coming to a live event? Are they recording video for social media? What's fun that you're doing there?
Kita said all of the above.
I love it. I love it.
So yeah, we have had volunteers do a recorded testimonial for us. We have some testimonials. Right now we're trying to recruit for one of our programs called the Tennessee Person-Centered Music Program, and we're using quotes from volunteers to help recruit other volunteers.
I love it. I love it. We have a very consistent habit of getting, when volunteers come into the clinic, dentists and hygienists and assistants come in to actually give care as a volunteer to our patients. We've been very consistent about taking pictures of them, and I'm hopeful that I can put in my memory bank to start shifting over to actually getting some little video quotes from them kind of each time that they're here, because the more kind of you cultivate it and get a bank of them, the more gold you're going to mine and be able to have something that just is going to really move folks. I like the consistency of capturing. And we do have photo albums on our Interfaith Dental Facebook page, specifically for dentist volunteers, and specifically for hygiene and assistant volunteers, and specifically for non-clinical volunteers. And we sort of periodically update and add photos to those albums as a way for people to be able to go not only see that we shouted them out in public, but also to be able to share their experience, and we encourage them to kind of brag on themselves as volunteers as well. Cool. I love it. And again, the values and the enhancement motivations that we just discussed, maybe that's not necessarily why everybody came to us, but the more we can cultivate those, the more that we can enhance the retention and the sort of commitment and success of those volunteers in the space, because those are the kind of commitment styles that studies have shown are more likely to retain, to come back, and are more likely to really be doing a good job in their role. That being said, there are plenty of other reasons people come in to serve. The third way, understanding this is kind of a huge number of volunteers at my agency fit in, because we have lots of people that are future dentists and future hygienists and future assistants who kind of want to be in our space just to observe and be in the space and learn about the career that they're getting ready to go into. So these folks may think volunteering lets me learn through direct hands-on experience. They might be people newly in an industry like our folks are. It might be a retiring professional that wants to keep their skills up. It might be somebody who's curious about the structure of a nonprofit organization, or curious about the structure in case of a dental office. So folks that are really interested in learning about the profession that we are in, whether it's, in my case, a dental office or a nonprofit, because we're both. Sometimes these folks can be a challenge because their skills aren't as polished. They really want more hands-on experience than sometimes we're able to give them, because we have to be careful to maintain the high standards of our program delivery while kind of we still offer those volunteers. These volunteers can become strong advocates of our mission as they go out to their careers. We definitely have had, it is an effort to really engage these folks in meaningful ways for them without give our needs. But we've like in our off to dental school now, we have had students who volunteered with us in that studying their bachelor's before dental school, who have gone off then to dental school, and now 4 years later they're back in the community as dentists, and they are committed to volunteering with us to give care to our patients. So it definitely is ripples in the pond. It is another egoistic or external motivator, another one that lands in that effective commitment style, which means they want to serve, which does show kind of higher retention for as long as they are learning and getting the benefits that they want out of it. It does come with a desire to do a good job, which is awesome. So with that in mind, let's talk about how these folks can be really motivated and fed.
Kristin, I apologize. I don't mean to cut you off. Your connection's going in and out a little bit.
There's opportunity standing definitely is balanced. Excellent, lovely.
So maybe one thing that would help, and I don't know if this will help or not, but if anyone has their camera on, maybe it's kind of a connectivity that way. So if we could all turn our cameras off. I don't know if that'll help you as well, Kristin. You're welcome to keep yours on, but I don't know if maybe that's eating up some of the feed, and I'm not a technology person, so I'm not sure if this will work or not, but hey, worth a try, right?
Awesome.
So I don't know if maybe you want to go back one slide, if you don't mind. I hate that you have to repeat yourself, but with it going in and out, it might be good just to kind of review that previous slide if you don't mind.
Right. Yeah, no worries. Thank you. And I turned my camera off, so let me know. Definitely. Thank you for jumping in. So the understanding motivation really is about learning in order to, they're excited about a new career that we're involved in. So we have had volunteers who, like these guys, came to us while they were just in college, not just in college. They were in college completing their bachelor's before they went off to dental school. These gentlemen are currently in dental school, but we have volunteers who have been through that process earlier and are now completed dental school. They're dentists and they're coming back to volunteer with us to give care, allowing us to see more patients in need. So it's rippling out, even though we can in the moment feel like it's extra effort to utilize this kind of a volunteer. It's so beneficial. And so that is kind of the reason why we want to understand where they're coming from and also what it is that they need or are looking for that's different from other motivations. So the things that we can provide them, opportunities to practice skills, again, totally understand that is thing that requires a delicate balance. We want them to feel like they are getting meaningful opportunities to learn new skills, but your clients, like mine, sort of didn't sign up to be guinea pigs for training. So to keep, it's a balance that we have to pay attention to balance between letting these folks sort of practice and ensuring that they aren't getting in the way of our program staff and they are not negatively affecting what the program staff is doing with our clients. But if you can find that balance, it is a huge benefit to the agency now and in the future. So explaining how the task fits into the whole mission, a point from before, it's lovely how how things that we can do meet the needs of folks with many different motivations. So they, in this case, it allows volunteers to learn more about a nonprofit agency, about why a behavioral counselor, I'm going to go to the dental world, why we do nutritional counseling and behavioral counseling, because that helps with people's oral health. So being able to connect what they're doing now with the whole mission of the agency is another great way to help folks that are interested in our field of work kind of learn how things work. Yeah, any professional experience that folks kind of get in your agencies? It's like we have sort of future dentists that want to come volunteer in our space because they're going to be dentists. Anybody else have kind of people reaching out because they want to be in that career or industry?
Again, everyone, feel free to type into the chat box and I'll give an example or unmute yourself. That'll work too. Whoa, unmute yourself without the music.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. We do have volunteers for the person-centered music program. This came into the chat for future music therapists. I'm not sure if we have anyone with our SHIP program or the State Health Insurance Assistance Program, but I know we utilize quite a few pharmacy students in the fall who kind of get that experience working with prescription drug plan comparisons and how they'll be able to help older adults find more cost-effective drug plans when they become pharmacists.
That is so awesome. And I'm sure that training them up in the first place, folks are kind of feeling, I could very quickly and easily do this myself. But then getting them trained up is such a benefit to them, and they feel so connected and supportive of the mission that you're serving. I love it. Cool. Well, connected to the understanding, but kind of on a different tack, the career category, many of Interfaith Dental's volunteers land here too. It's similar to understanding, but this one is about folks looking for help in their job search. not about gaining knowledge or skills. So people with this motivation kind of think volunteering can help me get my foot in the door, make professional connections, look good on my resume. Those are definitely a little bit different motivations. Now, this is another egoistic extrinsic motivation. This one falls into kind of a different commitment style, because these are folks that aren't necessarily saying that they want to serve. Those folks are kind of feeling like they have to serve, in this case, to kind of help them get a job. So that kind of falls into the motivation style or the commitment style of continuance. That is just a description of kind of what we can expect as far as their retention and their commitment to kind of doing a good job. And it's definitely true that this style of commitment shows less retention for sure. People pretty much can fall off of our volunteer roles as soon as they get a job, or as soon as they have met the expectation for listing us on their resume or whatever. And it does show an average commitment to their duties. So certainly these folks are not trying to go above and beyond in their service with us, but they definitely are still interested in doing a good job, most specifically because they perhaps are looking for a reference letter or to list us on the resume. So an average commitment style when it comes to someone doing a good job for us, and likely not going to show high retention, which is a bummer because so many of these volunteers are the folks that serve in my clinic. But, you know, then it's our mission then as volunteer administrators to kind of, they come to us with the career motivation, kind of connecting them to those earlier values and enhancement motivations. But to serve the folks who are meeting this kind of motivation is important in order to really ensure that our volunteers are feeling like they're getting what they want, so that they are doing a good job for our missions. And again, on the subject, and no judgment, every potential volunteer is valuable. These guys, all the people, because they can either become an advocate of our agency or a critic of our agency. So volunteers might also meet a current need, but not an ongoing need. So the fact of retention may not be the goal with every volunteer. It's just one element to consider. And a volunteer who is with us now is with us now. And so sometimes these guys might be the majority of your interested volunteers too. So it's important to understand how they can have a satisfying experience, also while we try to cultivate those values or enhancement motivations. So with that in mind, how can we support these guys? Definitely, we could have a whole 1 hour session on what the best record keeping platforms are for volunteer service, and not just on their hours, but also feedback on their skills and performance. And it's an important thing we can provide for all volunteers, but especially these folks. Good records are really important, and we volunteer administrators are definitely responsible for storehousing this data, but it is up to the program staffers who work with the volunteer to report this information to us. So we have to keep an open dialogue and stay in communication with the program staff, even if we are recruiting, onboarding, placing the volunteer, and then the volunteer is working day to day with a program staffer instead of us. We need to stay in communication with those program staffers, so it's very easy and not a hassle for them to report any feedback to us about the standards of the job that they're doing, the work that they're completing. Is it being done effectively? Are there issues that you need to address? That sort of thing. Are there, in your agencies, are you the ones sort of managing the volunteers day to day after you recruit and onboard them, or do you have program staffers who are working with them every day, as opposed to you overseeing them when they're doing their service? For the chat, obviously.
Yeah, while we're waiting on people to put that in the chat box, I had a related, semi non-related question. So we don't have a centralized reporting system for our program. Some do. Some have their own through grants and like a required reporting system, but we don't have something for volunteers specifically. Can you let us know kind of what you all use?
I can. So we used to have Razor's Edge, which is kind of a nonprofit industry standard for donor and volunteer kind of record keeping, a CRM system. We've transferred over to Bloomerang, which is a much more cloud-based and kind of intuitive web-based kind of system. It is tailored to donors, but we've added functions to deal with volunteers. In our space, the most frequent volunteers are also our donor. Either their donors or the folks that we are hoping to cultivate as donors, and so it's important for us to integrate those two systems. But there are many agencies that really their volunteers are a very separate pool than their donor cultivation. So there are lots of CRM programs that deal sort of just with volunteer tracking. I would suggest Hands On Nashville as a resource for information on those kinds of things. We actually, Hands On Nashville here in the Middle Tennessee area, they have what's called the Volunteer Administrators Network, which is just kind of a industry networking group where we do little monthly meetings, and they occasionally will talk about that subject too. But I know people will just do spreadsheets and they'll just track volunteer hours on Excel spreadsheets, and for sure hours and contact information and notes are a really important thing to track on everyone, and those things can happen in Excel. But there are definitely lots of programs out there that are tailored just for that.
Thank you. And we did have some responses come into the chat to your question. So depends on the program if they have multiple staff people, and then program staffers for some of the bigger programs do work with the volunteers more.
Cool. Awesome. I'm glad, definitely. Like the more that folks are, that the program staff is kind of hands-on with the volunteers that are helping them out, the more really that engages the volunteer as well to feel like part of the team. But definitely very important to make sure that you're in constant communication, because though they are day-to-day managers, which means they should feel empowered to supervise and instruct that volunteer and deal with issues, they will likely need to loop you in sometimes when there are big issues. So yeah. Cool. Of course, networking opportunities, that's a way, doing events and inviting volunteers into events. We saw in another motivation. I love how things check several buckets and check several boxes. So event invitations are definitely appreciated by folks who are job searching and trying to keep an open mind of who we can introduce to whom really can be an amazing benefit to those folks who are volunteering with us because of this career motivation. And besides folks that are kind of looking to help in their careers, another big motivation is the social function. And this could be somebody that's new to the area, somebody that's new to the industry that we're part of, somebody who's retiring and is going to miss the social aspect of going to their job, somebody who's talked into serving by a peer group. That happens a lot. And it's good to keep in mind, even if this wasn't motivated the volunteer to serve in the first place, it can certainly be a bonus benefit to anyone's volunteer service. So another extrinsic motivation, of course, this one can fall into two different commitment styles, kind of based on how they came to feel this. The continuance style, like before, is I need to serve. These are folks that kind of feel that there will be negative consequences to not serving, and those are the folks that can show low retention, but some good engagement in their service while they're with us. And those are kind of folks that feel like they're going to miss out on the opportunity to socialize if they are not in this volunteer job. The other normative commitment style is more about I'm supposed to serve. And these are folks that just kind of feel like it's, you know, all of their friends are doing it. So they're doing it just because your friends said you're supposed to, and they kind of peer pressured you into it. That normative commitment style is the one that really shows low retention, but also low engagement in the job while they're serving. So it's really important to kind of recognize that folks in that normative kind of commitment style, like folks that were just kind of peer pressured, everybody's doing it, you got to come do it, are going to probably not be the folks that are going to go above and beyond in your in the role that they're doing for you. And it might be extra important to try to connect those folks with some values or some enhancement motivations, as opposed to just having them be a body in our roles because their friends talked them into it. Again, no judgment. Sometimes people come to us, not just to us. Sometimes this is the very first time someone's ever volunteered and given their time because their friends kind of talked them into it, or they felt like everybody's doing it and I feel like a bad guy if I'm not. So if those folks do have a satisfying volunteer experience and are sort of made to feel connected with their with our mission, or with their you know, doing good was a good thing to do, then that could really cultivate a future volunteer for us, or just for our volunteer community. So with that in mind, let's talk about how we can support volunteers that are motivated by our social function. They're all pretty self-explanatory. We call this at my agency being the host of the party. We should see volunteers as guests in our homes. Kind of, we hope to not only show them a good time ourselves, but ensure also that the program staff that's working alongside them also feels motivated and interested in making their experience enjoyable too. In our agency, group volunteer opportunities can require some logistical work. For example, dentists who come in and give care for us, it's very hard to schedule more than one dentist at a time because we have to have the support staff for them. But that being said, even if it's logistically difficult, it's worth it for us to try to do that when we can, because that social function in the role can really satisfy the motivations of some volunteers. And also, if we aren't able to do a group opportunity for some volunteers, we ensure that they're getting that social function from the folks that are working alongside them. So in our space, that's a dentist, a staff dentist working next to a volunteer dentist. It's really important to encourage those two to be able to kind of be socializing between patients and kind of getting to know each other, and making sure that those program staffers are helping us be the host of the party. Yeah. And then professional and agency events, again, it's always a good thing to think about. If there's anything that we're doing as a staff, or there's anything that we are invited to as a staff, is it ever appropriate to invite a volunteer along? Or is it ever appropriate to, you know, include a volunteer in our stuff? Again, it feeds that social motivation just as it does with those more career enhancing motivations. So gonna hang out for thoughts on that one. That was the 5th of our motivations. So just wondering if I need to slow down, if anybody has any thoughts or.
Cool. Nothing has come into the chat.
I love it. I mean, I don't love it. You know what I mean? That means I think that everything was understandable. Please, y'all, ask me questions all throughout the time. And the 6th motivation, protective. These folks could be anything from folks who have guilt in their own lives, and so do service in order to ameliorate that guilt, that feel guilty for not giving money or previously supporting our agency, and so kind of volunteer because they said no to a donation pitch. Definitely folks who need community service, either for a court order or for a high school or college class, internships. All of those things are kind of in this main motivation. It's definitely obviously an extrinsic motivation, and it definitely falls into that last of the three commitment styles. Normative, those are the folks that feel like they're supposed to serve, and so in and of itself, this motivation does not show high retention, also really does not show high engagement in the duties they perform for us, and really sort of, you know, self-motivation and going above and beyond in their task. But still, again, no judgment. Every potential volunteer is important. They can be an advocate or a critic. And if these folks come to us with this motivation, and we can also instill in them some of those other values or enhancement motivations, then maybe we're going to gain an amazing volunteer. And if not, we definitely, hopefully, are going to gain an amazing advocate. So what we can provide for these folks looks a whole lot like the values and enhancement stuff, because if it's not the required service, which hopefully they will tell you up front, it's hard to know who volunteers just because they feel guilty. So it's good practice to always try to make folks feel good about their service. So those points definitely look like the ones from before. People that do need required service, it's definitely up to your group or agency or department to decide and schedule if they're going to allow that. Certainly there are lots of in-depth webinar series about policies and procedures in place to do that, but again, that's another advocate that you can turn out, and so it's another set of hands that can help you complete your mission. So if it is a thing that you're able to advocate for allowing, then there's I believe that it's a great thing to get into. So thoughts or questions around people that feel like they're supposed to serve, they're kind of required to come to us? Any rants or questions about that?
Nothing's come into the chat box yet, but please type your responses in there.
Yeah.
I know something that we've tried to do at our office, especially with interns who may feel like, you know, we're here because we have to be, is we really relate what they're doing to the overall mission. So if they're doing data entry, I know this is, you know, a mundane task that you may not be enjoying, but without this data, we're not going to get funding and we're not going to be able to help as many people. Or, you know, stuffing envelopes is, you know, we're recruiting more people to help with the program. So tying it back, even those little tasks that, you know, we have to do, and hopefully we'll do it with the intern or volunteer that's being, you know, voluntold is kind of what I like to call it, to do.
Yes.
So if we're also doing it with them, then they'll see that it's important, that it's not just kind of an activity being dumped on them, so to speak.
I love it. I love that. Yeah, doing alongside. Brilliant. I love it. Well, these folks definitely have some value, even if they are a little bit of work. So just to recap all six, these are the 6 volunteer motivations from Clarion Snyder's study. Again, every potential volunteer is valuable in their own way, either as an advocate, a future supporter, you know, converting them from a reluctant volunteer to an engaged and excited one, someone to possibly donate in the future if you're so inclined. So we all work really, really hard to maintain our agency's brand image as volunteer administrators. We are tasked with keeping up our department's respect among the community, its standards for compassion and grace. Volunteer administrators are so important because they're accountable for upholding those standards in all of our interactions with volunteers, past, present, or future. And there's why. These are a couple of our dentist volunteers with a couple of the wonderful, amazing patients of Interfaith Dental. And it is the reason, volunteers are the reason that we are able to give care to more patients in need than we ever could with just our staff. So your job and my job and our jobs are so amazingly important to the mission of our agency. And I just celebrate all of you and love to hear what kind of thoughts on any of this or amazing ideas or questions. Throw it in the chat, unmute, whatever you like.
Definitely. Thank you, Kristin. This has been really amazing. I'm curious, have you seen or taken the functional approach to volunteer motivations?
Yes, the VFI.
Yes, I love that. And I love those kind of like, what kind of personality are you, or how do you work
Yes.
best? Um,
And Clary and Snyder actually did use that VFI in this study to help them kind of narrow down into the 6. And I would have to do more research. In my mind, I'm not 100% sure if they were helpful in crafting that volunteer functions inventory or if they simply used it in their studies. But yes, a very strong tool for them.
If you don't mind, I found it on
Yes.
online. Is it okay if I put that in the chat and share with everyone?
I love it.
And actually, that was a question of where can we find that? So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat for everyone.
Cool. And there's the 2 studies that I quoted today and my contact info also.
And what I think, I've taken this inventory at least 3 times over the last 10 years. And every time I've taken it, my motivation or my function has changed. It used to be all career function. Like I wanted to steal every idea that another volunteer coordinator had. And now I'm in values, and then I was in enhancement. So I do definitely encourage everyone, if you have, it doesn't take super long. There's some math involved, so that might turn some people off. But go ahead and take that. I just think it's a really great, and it's something that I don't know what your opinion on this is, Kristin, but probably not something that a brand new volunteer should take, but maybe a volunteer who's been with you for like a year or 2, who you're a little more comfortable with. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a self, you know, what is the word? You're grading yourself, and certainly you're more apt to really be honest when you're the only one seeing your results. And of course, every one of our volunteers is just going to tell us, oh, I'm just here to do a good thing and make a difference. So I think doing our own tests and for volunteers that have been with us a while and that we've established trust with, it's an awesome thing. In general, I think it's important to understand and recognize those things in our volunteers, but not necessarily make them report them to us. It's, self-reporting. You say what people think, what you think people want to hear.
Definitely. I'm just thinking kind of more of that understanding and career function. If we have volunteers who show that as a really high score, that could motivate us to, maybe give them some more responsibility, or, hey, we're going to do this project. I think this would be a really great way for you to build on your skills. So not having it be a requirement to report, but like, hey, if you are in these categories, here's some new things that we can maybe introduce to you as something that you can be engaged more with our programs.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Just information for our volunteers, just showing them that we care about them. And if you have this motivation, let us know how we can help. Yeah, I love it. I dig it.
Yeah. Anyone else have any questions, comments for Kristin? And there's her email. I'm sure she would love for anyone, I'm just assuming, to contact her anytime.
Absolutely.
You know what happens when you assume. Alrighty. So, Kristin, if you can hang out with us maybe for another 10
Yeah.
or 15 minutes or so, I'm going to ask you to stop sharing your screen. Thank you. And I'm going to share mine just to give everybody a few updates. You're getting some praise in the chat box as well. So you might be able to see the chat box now that you're not sharing your screen. Oh, and there's all the nieces and nephews. Oh, and I got to switch my display. There we go.
Love
So,
it.
real quick, we're just going to go over just a few updates. I think we're going to end the session a little bit earlier today. But I did want to let you all know that the 2022 Volunteer Impact Report has been released, and I cannot thank you all enough for everyone who participated in this report. You can see the link at the bottom there, and I'm going to send all of this out in a PDF, so you'll be able to click all the links and all that good stuff. But on our website, we have the 2021 and 22 reports up. And this year, we reported over 9,000 volunteers who did over 372,000 hours of volunteer service across Tennessee for the calendar year of 2021. So while it is the 2022 report, we looked at January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021. And every program that reported, we had 10 programs total listed in the report. That first picture there in the blue, that's just the cover of the report. And then every program has kind of their own information page that has like a program background, some success stories, and then how to volunteer for the program. So short, sweet, and to the point. And then the next page, so you kind of open up the book and it's almost, I don't want to say centerfold, but I mean, there it is. So you have the information on one side and then you have a program statistic infographic on the other. So hopefully not only is this going to show the impact our volunteers are having, but also our programs as a whole. So this is a really great outreach tool that we can use throughout the year. The program statistics that are up on the screen right now are for the nutrition program, and that's home delivered meals, and also I believe some congregate meals may also be in that, or it could be just home delivered. I probably should have asked that. Keita, if you want to type that in the chat box for me and help me out, I'd appreciate it. But we served almost 29,000 older adults, provided 3.7 million meals last year. So these numbers are home delivered meals and grab and go meals. Thank you, Keita. And we had almost 5,000 volunteers that contributed. You know, you can see on the screen, I'm reading it. Sorry, I hate when presenters do that, but here we go. Over 232,000 hours. From one year to the other, so from our 2021 report to 2022's, we had an additional 1,760 volunteers reported who did over 103,000 more hours than last year. So that doesn't mean that we recruited over 1,700 volunteers necessarily. It just means that more program staff have reported. I think more programs are seeing the value of tracking, kind of like Kristin mentioned with like the reporting systems, even if it's just in a spreadsheet. And we did have some people chat into the comment section as well about one of our programs uses the STARS system that's required by the federal grant and also has that paper backup. And then another person mentioned the volunteer scheduler is a good web-based software program that tracks and schedules as well. So this is a really great report. I'm super excited about it. Please feel free to use it. Let me know as you look through it if there's anything you want to be included in next year's report. I'm kind of thinking as we grow, I know we have unique programs in certain areas. For example, Southeast Area Agency on Aging and Disability does Santa for Seniors, and that's a huge volunteer project where volunteers donate. So that might be something that we want to add to the report, or coalitions or something along those lines. An ever-evolving report that we want to showcase as much as we can every year. So again, thank you so much. We're really excited we got to release this for National Volunteer Week. So the timing just all worked out this year, and I'm very excited about it. I wanted to remind you all about the upcoming Points of Light conference. Not a cheap conference to attend if you want to attend in person, but there is a virtual option. So July 13th to the 15th, Points of Light is going to be in person in Orlando, Florida at Disney. Not many of us, if any of us, may have a budget to travel to attend the conference in person, but there is a virtual option for a much cheaper rate for the 3-day conference at about $150. And again, I'm going to send this information out in a PDF so that way you can click that link there at the bottom, get all that registration information. They're working on the agenda and all the speakers. I went 1 year pre-COVID, by far the best volunteer conference that I've ever been to. So fingers crossed I can at least attend virtually as well. For anyone interested in receiving their Certified Volunteer Administrator credential or their CVA, this is an international certification. There's 3 of us that I can think of off the top of my head who has taken the exam and passed it in our aging network. So anyone who's interested in receiving this certification or testing for it, I should say, you don't automatically get it. You can see that there's some information sessions from the Council for Volunteer Administration, May 2nd, June 16th, July 12th, and August 1st, all at different various times. So you can do evening, morning, kind of hopefully getting as many people as they can to attend those. The next testing window is October 1st to the 14th. And again, everything has a price tag on it, but it's about $350 to sit for the exam. And we started back in 2021 or end of 2020, early 2021. We started a study group, and we generally met about twice a month, usually on Fridays in the morning. A great way to end the week to talk about volunteers, right? To help each other study for it, do practice exams. We had people who took the exam kind of give their experience and ways to kind of calm your nerves about it if you have test anxiety, like I do. And we're hoping to start that study group back up in July of 2022, or July of this year, I should say. I'm thinking probably mid-July, but if you're interested in joining that study group, please let me know. I'll get you on the list. And by joining the study group, it doesn't mean you have to sit for the exam in October. It could just be you want to hang out with us and talk about volunteer stuff. And the more the merrier. We're always happy to have people join that study group. And our next webinar is going to be Thursday, May 19th, same time, whether you're Central Time, you're 10 a.m. and Eastern Time, you're 11, to talk about practical tips to improve your volunteer retention by Rebecca Nofi, who is the Volunteer and Community Engagement Manager at the Greater Nashville Regional Council. So I hope you'll be able to attend that one with us. And as always, we appreciate everyone who attends this webinar series. I have some new friends from Pennsylvania who've joined us this session. I think I've seen some names that I met yesterday. So thank you all for coming and enjoying and attending the session with us. And thank you again, Kristin, for your words of wisdom and all of your expertise. We appreciate you more than you know. Participant turned presenter. It could be you next year if you want. So yeah, I will kind of unshare my screen and we can open it up for any questions. To feel free to unmute yourself. And at the same time, if you have other things you need to go and do, you get a few minutes back in your for your presentation. Oop, I'm just hold on. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording as well, so that way if anybody wants to answer questions that aren't recorded. Again, thank you all so much. We appreciate you.